All right, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Thank you, Jason and Matt, for joining us today for Lunch with EFI.
Thanks for having us. We call it Lunch with EFI because it's lunch on the East Coast, but we're all in Arizona. So
zero of these participants.
Yeah, it's like brunch.
Yeah,
that's brunch right. With EFI.
We should have a little different graphic for when it's only us, because our East Coast friends aren't joining us today. But yeah, we've got a good meal planned out for everybody today, and we're gonna jump right in with an appetizer from Jason. Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, it's a sad news to report. We talked about this in weeks past. Mississippi has long been a laggard when it comes to adopting education choice policies or really any education reforms whatsoever. In recent years, though, they have improved, and they improved because they listened to conservatives about the science of reading, the importance of literacy. They made some improvements, and it's paid off dividends. Mississippi has been the fastest improving state, I believe. Ladner, you can correct me on that, but I think they're certainly one of, if not the fastest improving state when it comes to literacy. And now they had the opportunity to listen to conservative reformers again and embrace school choice, which is something that we've seen just since 2020. We've gone from 0 states with universal publicly funded school choice to 18 states. And have things fallen apart in those states? No. We have a lot of evidence that as states adopt school choice policies, more choice and competition is the rising tide that lifts all boats, and that the public school system actually improves in response. But still, the Chicken Littles are out there saying, "Oh, this is going to destroy everything. We're making so much progress." I had some progressive reply gal on Twitter actually ask me today, "Oh, why are you upset about this? The Mississippi policymakers, they don't want to threaten all this progress they've made." And I was like, "Yeah, they've made progress because they listened to conservative policy advocates and adopted conservative policies. That's led to benefits. And they didn't listen to progressives like you. So they should probably continue to do that, and they will see benefits." But unfortunately, even though the Governor Tate Reeves has been very strong on this, House Speaker Jason White has been very strong on this. He sponsored legislation HB 2, which House Bill 2 would have adopted universal school choice, as well as a number of other reforms. They sent it over to the Senate, and sad to say, the Senate didn't even deliberate. They just voted to kill it. And so Jason White, the Speaker of the House in Mississippi, had very strong words. He says Senate leadership has aligned themselves with the ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, the Mississippi Democratic Party, and the status quo. So not mincing words at all there. And likewise, Governor Tate Reeves jumped in with a very harsh tweet saying basically that, the leftists, they think that government knows best and parents should never be empowered. They have a different point of view. I respect it. I totally disagree, but at least I can respect it. But my Republican colleagues, he says, basically are even worse because they're doing the same thing as the left, but they say that they support empowering parents. And says that's why in my 23 years, I've never been more disappointed in elected officials than I am this morning in Lieutenant Governor Hoseman and Senator Dennis DeBar, because they killed their conservative legislative priority. So sad news today for kids in Mississippi, but perhaps not all hope is lost. Matt, what could they do? Ladner, how could we, are there still some paths here to expanding education freedom for families in Mississippi?
It's a great philosopher, Yogi Berra, once said, it ain't over till it's over. So I haven't spoken to anyone about what the the next steps in Mississippi might be.
I thought you were going to say Yogi Berra said that it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future.
Especially when they're about the future. Yeah. It is very unfortunate. I've seen, like you, Jason, seen a lot of people, making this strange argument that, the Mississippi miracle, it would be threatened by school choice. Maybe we can talk about this in a future lunch, but when you look at Mississippi's NAEP scores, their fourth grade scores are quite impressive. They've gone up a lot. Eighth grade scores have not budged one tiny little bit, right? Yep. And so, am I happy to see their fourth grade scores go up? Absolutely. But, why is it that 4 years later, when those kids are getting into eighth grade, you're not seeing any improvement in the eighth grade scores, right? So ultimately, these things are not incompatible, right? You can have strong literacy policies. Mississippi and everyone else, like Mississippi's ahead of the curve on this stuff, but still, there's a whole universe of things that happen after third and fourth grade, right? And so, choice and literacy are not incompatible, and Mississippi could get, have a source of improvement and increase family satisfaction, empower their teachers to create new schools. All these things, both of these things at the same time, and it's a shame to see what the Senate Education Committee did there.
It seems like regardless of what form it takes, all opposition to these types of programs, whether it's charter schools or ESAs or any form of choice, it always comes back to the staffing. It comes back to adults. And in every case, like I say, we're not prioritizing the education of kids in our opposition to these programs. We're prioritizing somebody's job.
Right.
It's protectionism for adults. I can't think of a case where that's not the driving motivation.
Right. Oh, there's some different flavors of school choice opponents, but that one is probably the most prominent.
But right. I wonder if you whittle it down. And maybe there is, maybe I'm just not.
Oh yeah. Like for instance, I think there are some clear people who are just like anti-religious, and they're sort of an anti-evangelical secularism.
That's fair. Yeah, sure.
And that, not to say that they don't make common cause with people who are concerned about using public schools as an employment source, but but that is the main one for sure.
Yeah.
Right. I guess it's at least 75-80% of opponents.
Right. Well, a disappointing day in Mississippi, that's for sure. But again, not all hope is lost. There are some legislative maneuvers that the House could employ to bring this bill back from the dead in some form, pass some things piecemeal, maybe attach it to some other Senate priorities. The question really at this point, I think, is how much political capital Governor Tate Reeves and Speaker Jason White are willing to put in. So far, they seem to be willing to put in quite a bit of capital. They've been really out in front on this issue. And so, we'll see. When you've got one chamber and the governor on one side of an issue and the other chamber on the other, I would say at least 3 out of 5 times that side is going to prevail. So maybe the Senate succeeds in destroying this bill, but we'll see. President Trump hasn't really weighed in yet, specifically in Mississippi. In other states, he has a long-standing policy of being in favor of school choice, and in other states so far this year, the president has weighed in and said, this particular bill, for example, in Tennessee, this is a priority that is in line with, the MAGA President Trump agenda. And that has been effective in getting some recalcitrant Republicans on board. Perhaps we see a similar dynamic play out in Mississippi. Time will tell. But in the meantime, Matt Ladner, it's hard today with 2 Matts. You've been watching some craziness in Congress. What happened we sent someone. We didn't send our best from Arizona to Congress to testify. What happened?
Well, last week the Senate, I think it's called the HELP Committee, the Health, Education, Labor, and something else committee.
Yes, as Reagan said, right? When the nine, what was it? The nine scariest words in the English language. I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Yeah, exactly.
The HELP Committee.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I had this testimony sent to me. John Kirtley was there to, be the witness that supported school choice, and the opponent of choice was the president of the Arizona Education Association, Marisol Garcia, and she submitted written testimony, which you can see the beginning of here. And I would say that Ms. Garcia was there to play the hits, right? Like she made a number of claims in this testimony that are demonstrably false. It's always
typos. They were typos.
No, they weren't typos. So if we go to the next slide, one of the claims she made is that Arizona had started this path towards school choice in 1994 with open enrollment in charter schools and with no meaningful academic improvement as a result, right? And so speaking as the perhaps only person nerdy enough on this planet to have done a very deep dive into Arizona's NAEP scores over and over again, of course, I can tell you that this is false, right? The NAEP at the state level goes all the way back to 1990. So we can actually go and look at what Arizona's, academic achievement levels were before any of the school choice business. Arizona at that time was a very different state than it is today demographically. It looked a lot more like Idaho than the Arizona of today. Somewhere back there in the early mid 90s, like 60% of Arizona students were Anglos. Today, 68% are students of color. The achievement gaps worked in favor of the Arizona in the early 90s compared to the Arizona of today. And yet Arizona's NAEP scores have improved. And if you break them down by a subgroup, you see the only way that our aggregate NAEP scores can improve is by having across the board gains through subgroups, right? Like we became far more diverse, but also higher scoring, right? And that's really the only way that could work. Then, of course, there's a separate source of data from the Stanford Educational Opportunity Project when they started publishing data on specifically academic gains. We see, oh, look, here's Arizona between 2008 and 2018, leading the nation in academic growth between grades 3 through 8, not only overall, but also across a variety of different subgroups, right? We led the nation overall. We also led the nation in academic growth for poor students, right? Arizona's charter schools have sky-high NAEP scores, especially at the 8th grade level, higher than any statewide average, despite, again, educating minority student bodies. So Arizona was the only state that made statistically significant gains on all 6 state-level NAEP tests between 2009 and 2015. So to say that there was no meaningful improvement in outcomes is simply false. Okay. Another set of claims that she made was about finances. We got, some of the more hits. We were, it's like, oh no, there are schools closing. Oh no, we've starved our public schools. The reality is that in 2017, the state of Arizona spent $10.3 billion on public education. And in fiscal year 2025, we spent $16.6 billion on public education.
Well, that's in real terms, Matt. Adjust it for inflation.
Even adjusted for inflation, yes, adjusted for inflation per pupil.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Well, in real terms, fine.
In real terms, per pupil funding has gone up 30%. Okay.
Great.
And yet we're meant to believe that this is, this devastating ESA program is now laying financial waste to the public school system in Arizona, when not only are they at or near all-time highs in terms of per pupil spending, even after adjusting for inflation, as we've discussed on this program before, they're also socking away record levels of funding. Most recently, the carry forward balance for school districts in Arizona was $7.8 billion.
And how many times the rainy day fund for the entire state is now?
It's about 3 or 4 times the size of the 5. Okay, the rainy day fund. Garcia claimed that students with disabilities participating in the ESA program are, quote, often disappointed. Now, I would note that the percentage of students in the ESA program in Arizona is at 19%, and for school districts, it is at 14%. And in addition to that, my colleague Jason Bedrick did a survey of ESA parents in Arizona and found that 99% of them support the ESA program, right? So,
and the growth of that program has been, nothing short of astronomical.
She also claimed that the ESA program is not popular. And I was like, really? There's 100,000 people that it's pretty popular with.
Right.
And in fact, the whole reason that she was there is because it is popular,
right.
And she feels threatened by it.
I love when they throw out conflicting talking points and just like to see which one sticks. I don't even know if they realize, it's on the one hand, it's not popular. On the other hand, it's so popular that everyone is running to participate in this program, and they're fleeing the public schools, and it's bad for the public schools.
Public schools, yeah.
And again, it's like so many of their talking points. The two cannot be true simultaneously, but they can both be false, right? And the reality is, it is popular, and lots of kids are lots of families are fleeing, and you've got 100,000 people participating in the program now. When I think we were maybe 10,000 or less just a few years ago.
Right. The budget stuff. She also kind of, the Arizona ESA program approximately takes up 6% of K-12 funding in Arizona, but educates 9% of the students. Okay. So, the idea that this thing is busting the budget is simply absurd. So, it would be nice if, there was some kind of mechanism to fact check things, I see things written, claimed all the time that like just 2 minutes of an internet search will, absolutely refute, but people keep repeating it anyway.
I like that in this graphic, Matt, that they call her a teacher, an Arizona teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, she actually is she's an 8th grade teacher, apparently simultaneously the president of the AEA. So
this is one of those, necessary but not sufficient kinds of descriptions of a person. Yes, she's a teacher.
It's just amazing that these guys are literally socking away billions and billions of they literally have more money than they know how to spend, and yet they're claiming that the ESA program is bankrupting them, right? It's like,
they literally have more money than they know it. In actual fact, to the tune of $7.8 billion, and it's higher than that.
Yeah, it went from 5.1 billion to 6.4 billion to most recently 7.8. So there's no telling what it'll be next year.
Incredible. Okay. Should we move on to dessert?
Let's do it.
Cool. So, I'm going to start with the fun little saying that we have, one of our unofficial sayings at EFI, underperforming charter and in parentheses and private schools go out of business. Underperforming district schools get more money. But that's not always the case. Not when you have extreme budget shortfalls across the country. According to NCES, for the latest year where we have data available, which is 2021-22, there were 755 public school closures in that year. Here's just a smattering of news stories and studies that have come out. A few of them here over the past 6 months. I think it's even within about the past 6 months, that show schools are closed. Districts are having to make decisions about which schools to close. So, Philadelphia, one of the favorite, boogeymans that school districts and teachers unions love to point to is school choice, is killing our public schools. Philadelphia doesn't have that problem. Milwaukee doesn't have that problem. And what's this one? Despite decline, I think that one was from Tucson. So the bottom two are Arizona, where we do have a lot of school choice. About 30% of all school-age children in this state are in a charter school or participating in the ESA program, which is incredible. It's very high. But school choice can't be the boogeyman every time. In fact, for a lot of these areas where we see, like LAUSD, for instance, is having to hold hearings on which schools they're going to close. The baby bust is real. We've talked about this many times on this podcast, and I refuse to let it go. I'm going to continue to bring this up. And the reason for that is because it's intensifying. I see more and more and more news stories on this every day, where the school districts are having to hold budget hearings, where they're laying off a bunch of people. They're having to make decisions about which high school or junior high to consolidate down into, fewer and fewer campuses. And all of these families come out in force against it. Lawmakers say we're underfunding public education because, look, we're having to close down schools. That's not the problem. The problem is not the funding issue. The problem is you don't have kids. And, for years, this is another thing maybe we can talk about that's obviously closely related is the labor issue. There's a teacher shortage. And for decades, we've heard about a teacher shortage. And it seems like it might be a blessing.
Well, a lot of that teacher shortage thing was exaggerated anyway, because they, shortage versus what? Well, versus the number that we say that we want to hire. And we want to reduce classroom sizes. Why? Because the teachers want more. The teachers unions want more dues paying members, right? And so it doesn't matter how many teachers you have, you always want more. So there's always a shortage, right? Yet somehow all these kids find a place to go, and they're taught by somebody. They just may be in a class with 23 kids instead of 19 kids, right?
Right.
And here too, they're looking for a boogeyman, and this is happening across the board, as you say. They want someone to blame when they have to make these decisions. And so any state that has school choice, they're like, oh, it's because of you. You're the reason that we're closing down. Now, one, as you pointed out, obviously this isn't true, because if it were true, why is it that this is also happening in states that don't have school choice? Oh, because of the baby bust, right? Fewer kids are born. You have fewer kids going to school. That means you need fewer teachers. You've got less money coming in for any state that is paying schools on something approximating a per pupil basis. No state does it purely on a per pupil basis, but obviously it's a huge factor. But they're going to blame it in our states, but we have to push back. Are children funding units for public schools? Right? In other words, are the kids there for the school system, or is the school system supposed to be there for the kids? And we can't let these kids leave to go somewhere their parents think is better for them, because it's going to have a negative effect on the school. The school needs money. So you got to bring those funding units. Oh, sorry, kids. You got to bring those kids back. No, like you're upset that kids are leaving. Do better, right? And they're usually going to schools that have less money per pupil that are doing better for those kids. So it's not a resource issue. It's a competence issue, and it's an incentives issue. For too long, they haven't had an incentive to perform better. And when you throw them, they constantly come out to the state government and say, we need more money. We need more money. Please, our teachers aren't paid well. And the state says, fine, here you go. Here's a giant pile of cash. And they say, great, thank you very much. And they go hire new administrators.
Yeah.
And they go build a new stadium, and they do all sorts of other things. And they come back and they say, hey, have you seen our teacher pay? It's terrible. Give us more money, right? No, we got to stop playing these games. Let the money follow the child, and the parents will choose the schools that are the best stewards of those dollars.
Yeah, and I see this, like I said, I think it's accelerating, and I think it's accelerating in a direction where some really difficult decisions are going to have to be made. I think that school districts across the country have painted themselves far enough into a corner, and there will be no way out but to make these hard decisions. School closures, cutting staff, and cutting it in the right place. For years it's been easy to just throw money at it. I don't know that it's going to be so easy anymore to continue to throw money at it for a variety of reasons. I think that state budgets just will not hold up. And the people that have been historically more than willing to continue to throw, Republicans included, by the way, this is not limited. I don't know. I can't tell you how many hearings I've sat in with legislators where, when we talk about teacher shortage and increasing pay to support our public school system, how many Republican heads just automatically start nodding. So this is not a partisan, specific issue. We're not talking about just the Democrats, the people that historically love the teachers unions and just do whatever they say. So I think that this problem doesn't go away. I think it intensifies and amplifies, and and at one point, bond ratings speak a lot, and I'm talking about the state's bond rating as as an entity will start to take precedence over the crying of the teachers unions about how they're being underfunded. And I think they start to listen to the bond ratings. I think the financial position of these states is going to take precedence.
Well, as it so often does. And actually, one thing I think it would be great, Ladner, here, write this down as a good study idea for us. There is some evidence that families are choosing to move to states that have school choice. It is a part of the attraction. Now, it's hard to disaggregate because the states that are adopting school choice policies also have other family-friendly policies. They've got
lower tax rates
already, lower cost of living. They have a more friendly business environment, so they're attracting certain types of businesses. So jobs are moving to those states. But certainly one of those things that's a part of this package is school choice. That is something that is attracting those families. And, maybe we could do something where you control for some of those other reforms. So like Mississippi is doing a lot of those reforms, but not school choice, right? So our families that are looking at a red state that has certain policies, a certain environment, is school choice perhaps the deciding factor? So perhaps they're bringing in more families, and that is mitigating some of the effects of the baby bust. Who knows?
Could be.
Yeah, I think the big picture thing is that in the 80s and 90s, the baby boomers were in their prime earning years. Okay. And so there was a lot of tax revenue that came in, right? And that generation has a tremendous amount of human capital, right? And in addition to that big revenue boost, the United States also got into the very bad habit of printing money. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when you combine those two things, what you see at the state level is that even in states with shrinking enrollments, they just juice up the spending per pupil to make up for it, or more than make up for it, right? So how does New York get to $40,000 per kid? Well, this is how. Okay. So who is it? Simon, who said that things that can't go on forever won't, right? I don't know how this plays out, but we've so far been kind of doing it, even in states like Arizona, right? The total spend on K-12 is still going up despite, or district spend is going up despite district enrollment going down, right? And it's because we're juicing the per pupil. The question is, how long can that go on? Well, there's two things on that front. Number one, by 2030, all of the baby boomers will have reached retirement age. Okay. And that will create a whole set of spending requirements to compete with K-12. And then second, I don't know how long we can just go on spending far, far, far more than we bring in revenue at the federal level, which obviously goes downstream to the state level as well. But it won't be forever. So buckle up, so at some point in the future, this is going to get, make the current, austerity. This is the thing, like we get these people crying about austerity even when they're rolling in money, right? The real austerity is not far from now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more school districts not being able to pass bonds like several that we see around us in Arizona. Higley Unified just held a vote last night, which is a school district here in Arizona in the East Valley. They held a vote last night on how to address their budget shortfalls, and they voted to cut staff. So it's happening. And by the way, Higley is, we've talked about it here on this podcast before. That specific school district cannot pass a bond to save their lives for several years running now. I think it's at least 3 years in a row. They've tried to pass a bond to override is what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get more money to support their M&O, and they can't do it. The voters will not have it.
Right.
So,
right.
Anyway,
I live in a district that did pass a gigantic bond and claimed they were doing it to address overcrowding, and then closed 4 schools about a month after the bond passed.
Overcrowding.
You can't make this stuff up, right? Like no one would believe it.
They were taking notes from our friend who spoke in DC.
Yeah.
Just lie. Just make it up.
Just unbelievable.
Hey, well, that wraps our lunch with EFI. Thanks, guys, for jumping in, and we had some good news stories to cover, and we'll see you again next week.
Take care, guys.
Thanks.